I'd like to call the board meeting to order, our September 13th board meeting. Mr. Farrar, would you give us the roll call, please?
Mr. Chairman, Mark Finkel.
Here.
Albert Hayes.
Here.
David Bergstresser.
Here.
Anthony Netto.
Here.
Jeffrey Rosenthal.
Here.
Robert Smullen.
Here.
Robert Leslie.
Here.
Robert Fulton.
Here.
John Hodgson.
Here.
Stephanie Rizicki.
Here.
Richard Ferrara, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We need a motion to adopt the meeting agenda. I know of no reason to go into executive session.
I'll make that motion then.
Mr. Rosenthal.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I don't know of any guests other than the public speaker. I'd like to introduce, I can't read that, I'm sorry.
Mr. Blankenbush.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. Ken Blankenbush, someone.
I've been called worse than that. First of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sir, could you just come closer so we pick up your...
Closer.
That would be fine. That would be fine. Thank you.
Thank you for having the meeting here 15 minutes away from my office. That's convenient for me. First of all, I want to start off by saying that I really appreciate John and Bob coming up to Casterland and having a meeting with the farmers. As you probably all know, that over in Casterland they've had flood concerns and water concerns. And I think, unless I have a different impression than John and Bob, I think that meeting went pretty good. We talked about response time and levels of water being released from the dams and so forth. But I think that, first of all, the farmers appreciated it, and I appreciated it. And I think it's something that's on your radar screen now, on our radar screen. And I think I think it was a really productive meeting. I want to thank you for having them come up and do that meeting. Now for my concerns. I think it was 2013 when I spoke before the board in Watertown. The first concern I have is that unless I'm wrong, I tried to get some information 10 days ago. I haven't heard back from the second floor, but my understanding is there has not been another appointment for the open seat. That concerns me. Not only, it's not that I'm accusing anybody of anything or trying to start a discussion, other than I think that we should have someone sitting on this board that looks especially for the interest of the Black River side. I don't know why that's taking so long. I don't know if it's political. I don't know what everything's political. But I'm not sure why we haven't filled that seat yet. Tried to get information from the second floor because my understanding is their appointment, right?
Correct. It is.
So I'm concerned about that. And that's why I would like to pursue getting someone seated on this board. The other thing that I talked about back, I don't know if it was 2013 or not, I'm losing track of time. I was concerned about the loan, the $2 million loan that came from the reserve fund to the Hudson Valley side. And I'm not going to go through all of that again because you all have heard it over and over and over and over again, and I don't want to go through the whole thing with that. My concern is, though, if in fact that fund was not hit, would we have to increase the user rates that are going to be increasing in Jefferson on the Black River side? If we had the $2 million in that fund that we have built up over the years for situations like user increases, would we really have to increase the user rates on the Black River side when we had that $2 million sitting in that reserve fund that could have been used to offset some of the cost to our users? I've been getting phone calls from a group of people talking to me and complaining to me about the increases in the funds related to the loan. I'm not really sure how much of that loan has been repaid, if any. And because I really don't know the answer to that. And how we're gonna set it up. Some people have told me that we're gonna set it up over 30 years, and we're gonna pay a little bit back every year. Then it comes, the question is, we're increasing the user rates because we took the $2 million away from the reserve fund to pay back the reserve fund. So in other words, we're charging the users in the Black River Valley, or Black River side, increased rates to help back pay the loan that was used to help the Hudson Valley side. That's my concern on this whole issue right now. And I really don't have anything else to talk about except that I'm leery about the way this whole thing is working, and my constituents are, especially those who are getting increased rates. They're coming back to me saying, they took the money away from us, we could have used that, and now they're increasing our user fund to pay back the money that they took from us in the beginning. And I just want the board to know that that's a concern of mine, it's a concern of the users on the Black River side, and basically that's all I wanted to say to the board today, that it's something that I'm concerned about, and I know my user, the people who are increasing those fees are also concerned about. So I want to thank the board for having me talk. It's keep it short and sweet, and thanks for coming to Loudon.
You're welcome. But I have a comment on that. I believe we just agreed to pay back some of that loan recently.
We've been paying that debt down. Right now, we made a initial payment. I don't have that. It was a six-figure payment. But following that point, we're paying the established 30-year, $10,000, I believe $510 a month.
But there was a larger amount
Yes.
approved for that.
Correct.
Based on that settlement we received.
Correct.
Right. And then that also helped us reduce the assessments in our last budget cycle for the Black River side.
I wouldn't connect the two.
Oh, okay.
No.
They weren't connected, but we
And
did
again,
reduce the
I
assessments.
mean, I'll address the notion of how we're repaying the note or the initial borrowing the money, and how that may or may not be connected to the actual assessments. There really isn't any connection in the established assessment for the Black River area for the 3-year period we're currently in, based on that note either way. The only argument you could make is that any of the capital projects that we're currently planning that are not underway in the Black River area would be accomplished by way of bond. If we were to have that $2 million, or whatever the number is at any given point in time, you certainly would have obviated any need to do the kind of borrowing we may end up doing, and in such case you'd eliminate the interest on the note. And I'm not making light of that. So that there's a connection there. Is it a huge number? I'll tell you what the number is when we know exactly what the exact cost of these capital projects will be coming down the road. And I believe the first one isn't scheduled to probably sometime next year. And there's other discussions regarding additional principal payments against that loan, substantial principal payments against that loan, that I can't give you an exact number now, but we would probably know that more definitively probably in the first quarter of next year. And any significant principal payment to that note, again, will significantly reduce any eventual bonding we would have to do for any of the capital projects.
I don't know if I'm out of order, but
Yeah.
it just seems to me that a 30-year payback is a little bit much.
The board at any time, and I think what we're trying to do is we've just now, over the past, maybe 12 months, gotten our financial footing on both areas under us. I think there's a huge opportunity to take not so much change the term of the note, but to beat the note down significantly on the principal side. So whether the note is 15 years, 20, 30, or 40 years, if I knock $1 million off of it, just to throw a number out there, we're gonna take that loan down substantially. And I think that's really that's what I think the goal is. We're just not in a position to do that based on.
Yeah, I think we picked a number that we knew we could live with. no
Correct,
matter what,
at the time, that's correct.
You know, and if we could do more, we certainly wanted to.
So I think I think there'll be some positive things that happen, in the first quarter of next year with regard to that note.
Yeah, and on your other, nobody wants more board members at board fill more than the people sitting here.
Us.
We are very close to a quorum if somebody's out sick, and there have been, I know this, the second floor is considering some nominees, and
I asked 10 days ago, and I haven't got a response, but that's,
Not,
I know it's not, I know it's not you
Yeah.
not appointing somebody, so don't get me
yeah,
wrong.
no, but I'm just answering with yeah, no, I didn't take it.
And just to give you a little background, I finished out I was the chairman when you came the first time up in Water. I was finishing out someone else's term, and they asked me to stay on for another 5-year term. So I'm here on my second 5-year term, just to have some sort of representation from the Black River side. So I live up in Old Forge.
So, yeah, no, we would like that as well. That's all I meant.
It wasn't my first choice to stay on another 5 years.
Any other comments? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. We need approval of our July 12th board meeting minutes, which we all have here in the packet. Ready?
So moved.
Mr. Bergstress.
Second?
Mr. Rosenthal.
Any discussion, corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Report of the executive director. Mr. Small.
Good morning, everyone. I really would like to thank everybody for the welcome I've gotten in the district. My 30, 60, 90-day goals to listen, think, and now act as the executive director. I've accomplished all those, and I've just been impressed by everybody in the district, but particularly all the stakeholders, everybody that I've met in which district matters touch. So I'm very appreciative for my homecoming from the Marine Corps back to the North Country. I issued 8 flag reports to the Executive Chamber. I sit in the State Energy and Environmental Portfolio Group. Attended a meeting with Jim Malatras, the Director of State Operations. Just as a note, I've been all around the district, met with the Indian Lake Owners Association, the Town of Day Property Owners Association, and the Great Sacandaga Lake Association to basically do interface and understand the public business of all the stakeholders across the entire area. I'll be back up here to the Black River area in Krogan for the Stillwater Emergency Action Plan. We had a previous meeting there, and we're going to talk about the emergency response for the dam. We've also been around to all of the counties here in Black River for the service of process for the apportionment, Hamilton, Herkimer, Oneida, Lewis, and Jefferson. And the meeting here, we'll follow this up with a senior staff presentation to Lewis County officials following this, and I also see folks from Herkimer County here as well.
Lewis.
I'm sorry. We also have done 2 inspections. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission inspection at Stillwater was then followed up by a DEC inspection, and no new findings were issued there. So we're well on our way, at least I am, to be able to familiarize where we're at in all the various areas of both the Hudson and the Black River. So, thank you.
Any questions?
No.
We move on to contracts. First one is resolution to authorize the purchase of a lawnmower. Mr. Farrar.
I'll let John start,
Okay.
basically the need.
all right, this is for up to the Hopkinsville Dam. Presently, we have a walk-behind mower up there, 36-inch, and it's a hand-me-down from the Black River Field Office. We've done some repairs to it, got it working, and now it's on its last leg, and I don't really want to invest any more money into it. With the purchase of this new mower, not only will we be able to do the flat areas, but we can also take this mower onto our sloped areas and mow those also. Presently, we're doing it with a tractor and a brush hog, and when it's on that slope, I've never liked it since day one. It's just dangerous, and when we do the slopes, we always have an extra person go to the dam for safety reasons to monitor that. So this new mower would eliminate the extra person going up there and eliminate that safety issue of mowing those slopes. So, sounds reasonable.
I have no problem with that.
Is there,
I'll make a motion for purchase.
is there a price then?
Yeah, I was going to
$5,200.
I was going to address the budget issue, just
Oh, okay.
if I may.
Go ahead.
The resolution is on page 35. The current budget for Hopkinsville does include the purchase of equipment, not in that amount, so staff, again, went ahead, solicited 3 bids. They went with the Gravely walk behind, and the amount for that mower, which exceeded $5,000 requiring board approval, was $5,205. I believe that's 20 cents, I'll check that.
I was gonna say, otherwise it's an awfully
or it's-
expensive lawnmower for
Right.
$5 million.
Yeah, 5 million.
205.
No, it's shy of 5 million.
Could I have one?
Right, right. That would have caught my attention.
More money from Blackbird side.
I'll still make the motion.
We have a motion to make the purchase. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
It's a safety issue.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Evaluation of SFO roof project, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Find that memorandum on page 36, I believe. A notice of invitation for bids for the replacement of the Sacandaga Field Office roof was placed in the state contract reporter at the end of July this year, seeking bids for the removal and of the asphalt roof and installation of a metal roof. We had 3 firms which submitted bids by the deadline. You can see the bids listed there. The bid prices range from $117,000 to a high of $208,485. Staff completed a detailed estimate of the probable cost to complete the roof, which reflected the anticipated labor, materials, and equipment, and came up with a total probable cost of about $95,000. And staff believes that the apparent low bid excessively exceeds the amount of the probable cost and recommends a rejection of all of those bids. And we would, over this winter, rebid the work, hopefully providing maybe some incentive to other folks to participate maybe, and or for at least these 3 folks to, firms to maybe sharpen their pencils and come down a bit in their price for this work. We may also do an alternate bid just to see what the cost for traditional asphalt shingle roof may be in comparison to the metal roof, and receive both of those in the next go-around also. So.
Okay. I don't think we need a motion for that. So next is resolution to approve, resolution to extend contract C 042013.
Thank you, yes. There's also a memorandum, Gomez and Sullivan's contract for the Hopkinsville Dam failure analysis. And they continue their effort in finalizing, and we are getting close. It's been several years that Gomez and Sullivan's been working on the dam failure
Right.
analysis.
This is bond council.
Oh,
Well, he could, no, that's all right. I mean, that
Just
was
do it in
after the
different order.
bond
Just
council.
so you don't confuse the 2 motions.
okay,
The contract you're talking about is CO9 2007.
Right.
Okay.
right.
Yeah, mine's quick.
You're on number D. not
Sorry.
number C.
I'll let you get right
Okay.
back into it. Page 38 is my memo, the resolution is on 39. To refresh the board's memory, this contract is for bond counsel services, and That contract had, I believe, 2 one-year extensions, both have been executed. So the expiration of that contract was August 5th, 2016. I expect some work to continue by bond counsel, primarily having to do with successful obtaining of the approval of DEC for the funding for the Hopkinsville Dam spillway reconstruction. So accordingly, I'd recommend to the board that we extend that thing, just give it 1 more year, August 5th through 2017.
So it doesn't change any of the amounts of the contract?
No.
Okay.
The amount of the contract remains, there's no additional amount.
Motion to extend the contract?
So moved.
I'll
Is there a second?
second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
Sorry for the confusion, all right? Now we can get to the other one. So, as I was saying, the extension of the contract is necessary for Gomez and Sullivan to finalize its Hopkinsville failure analysis. In particular, address some specific questions raised by FERC concerning the breach analysis and the hydraulic modeling. And that additional effort will require, obviously, some additional time. And so the staff recommends the contract be extended through December 31st, 2019 to allow completion of work.
Is there
There's no increase in cost.
No change in the
No.
contract?
no change for that either?
Associated with this.
Okay.
Let them do their work.
Motion to extend contract C 092-007.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Rosenthal,
Second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Hayes.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Staff and committee reports. First, Governance Committee, Chairman Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only agenda item in order of business was a review by Mr. Ferrara, an annual review of the policies under the Public Authorities Law that the district is required to maintain and keep in order. At our meeting moments ago, you heard Mr. Ferrara say all of those are up to date.
Very good. Finance Committee report, Chairman Neto.
Thank you. Yeah, the report that you've heard previously is that the board has to approve a resolution authorizing the creation of a debt service fund in the amount of $342,352 to be paid from the Hudson River Area General Fund. So that's my report and recommendation to the full board.
So you're making that motion?
Yes.
Second to that motion?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? General Counsel's report, Mr. Leslie.
My report can be found on page 45. As I noted earlier, Erie Boulevard and Boralex filed petitions with the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit seeking review of FERC's August 21st order calculating dates for the commencement of headwater benefit assessments and FERC's subsequent November 19th, 2015 order on rehearing and dismissing their motions for stay. The court granted us the ability to intervene pursuant to a scheduling order. FERC has filed, or Erie has filed their brief. FERC has filed their responsive brief. We have filed our reply brief. And at this point, FERC has now filed, or Erie has now filed its responsive brief. And now the parties are basically conforming their briefs to the certified index on the record. At some point shortly, the court, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, should schedule oral argument. The Attorney General will ably represent us during that oral argument. I've been told to expect that the guys that have been handling it for us to date and preparing the briefs and getting everything ready will be preparing the Solicitor General, who will probably be the one ultimately to argue before the Court of Appeals.
This is in New York City or
This is in
Washington?
Washington, United States Court of Appeals for the DC Circuit.
Shouldn't we all be there?
Probably at least myself and Executive Director Smullen should go down. If you guys want to go, I think it's going to be fascinating, but that's just me.
Mr. Neto and I concur that we think we need to be there.
Right, and I'm really hoping that this gets appealed to this U.S. Supreme Court and that I get to go there too. But I somewhat doubt that that's.
Well, it'll be tough
gonna
with
happen.
the current composition.
I really like our position. I like FERC's position. I think that Erie's position is weak, and I expect that we're going to get a sense of that at oral argument, and ultimately, at this point, believe that we have a good chance of getting a favorable decision and putting this matter to bed. On August 15th, Commissioner Sagos for DEC approved the Black River area apportionment. The executive director and myself then filed filed with the county clerk a cover letter, a copy of the apportionment, notice of grievance hearing, the board's July 12th resolution adopting the apportionment, and Commissioner Sagos' letter. Time, date, stamped copies were served upon the chair of each respective legislature and/or board of supervisors in each of those 5 affected counties with a follow-up mailing. Courtesy copies were mailed to each hydroelectric facility. Only one of those came back, so I'll see if I can't track down a better address for them. It's not jurisdictional that we get it to them, but we'll try. It's more likely we'll get paid if they actually get the bill. We also served courtesy copies on the comptroller and the director of the New York State Division of Budget because the state has a pretty significant share of the costs in that new apportionment. And on August 19th, we published notice of the apportionment grievance hearing in the regulating district's 2 official papers, the Times Union and the Watertown Daily Times. Other than those who appear at today's meeting, each of the other 5 affected counties have made polite inquiries regarding the apportionment. None of the hydros have, nor has the state. Anyone interested who may have appeared today is obviously inquiring and or objecting to the apportionment, but all must do so no later than the board's October 12th meeting, which will also be held in Loudville, however, this time out at the Stillwater Hotel, basically located near the major reservoir that this all really stems from. We have asked that any parties intending to air a grievance submit that grievance in writing at least 7 days in advance of the October 12th meeting. This will afford staff an opportunity to understand the issues presented and prepare a modification to the apportionment if one is warranted. We've filed, served, published, and mailed the notice of hearing early enough to provide all of the parties with at least 45 days to prepare their written complaints if they choose to do so. Turning now to the Hopkinsville Dam Remediation Project. I've been working with DEC Council to secure authority for the regulating district's contractor to utilize land south of the Berea parcel for staging and access to the Berea parcel and for placement of the toe of the planned embankment. Some factions within DEC have objected to some aspects of that plan for this DEC fishing access point, and those negotiations continue. As of yesterday, what I learned was basically they want to convene a meeting, they want to get all of the principals in the room and hash out a solution. Basically, the fisheries guy doesn't want us to impact their land and is throwing up some pretty weighty issues that would cause a huge delay.
Is this
Getting
the
this
owner of
thing
the
done.
property that's?
No, DEC.
No, it's DEC. DEC has a fishing access point
Right.
at that spot.
Okay.
We had
A
asked if we
ramp?
could,
I mean, when you say fishing access, a pier that people fish off
a
of?
parking
ramp?
lot and a,
It's a parking lot and a path,
Path
that
down to the
pathway,
road.
most of which actually runs across Bria's property and then eventually to the state property. But it's really nothing more than a parking area.
right.
And do they have an easement from Bria?
Not-
I don't know that they
It may
worry
not be
about
the
that.
path, it may not be sanctioned by DEC, but that's the path
Well,
that folks over the course of years
My
have
point
used.
being is,
Yeah.
the flavor of this discussion, if DEC is going to make an issue, then perhaps they should be enlightened that some of the land they're talking about is not within their jurisdiction for them to gripe about. Just a thought.
And there is land directly in front of, if you will, frontage on the river that could be utilized by fishermen or folks who park there, so.
Without a disturbance.
Which wouldn't necessarily cross any other private property
Right.
or the state property under our jurisdiction.
We're not so far down this road that we can't modify our project a little bit or get DEC to look at it from a higher level, perhaps, might have a different view of the benefits to all of the various parties involved. But what should be a very simple
Right.
temporary access permit has become,
Seems to
much
be a
more
rather
of a brouhaha.
myopic view of
you know, we.
the world, frankly.
We have a board on record saying that they want to remediate the dam in place, and there's some faction at DEC that thinks that that's not the way to go. I think we would have heard of DEC's upper management's concerns much earlier than this. So ultimately, I think we'll be able to resolve it. All I'm telling you is it's not been as easy as we thought it would be. And that, aside from a couple of FOIL requests that were processed, is my report.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Leskey? Thank you very much, sir. Compliance officer?
Thank you. My report can be found on page 46. I just have a couple of things worth noting. As I've mentioned before, Empire State Development and the Chamber are issuing report cards to state authorities and agencies to gauge the effectiveness and success of our MWBE efforts. We received our first report card. We have an A for this quarter. Our very first SDVOB report was submitted to OGS and approved, and currently our utilization through the veterans includes carpet replacement at SFO, that was a little over $3,000. We continue to look for any opportunities that we can to utilize SDVOBs. We have to have 6% of our budget for veterans. And lastly, as a reminder, in your board packet on page 47, 48, and 49 are the contract staff reports. Your review of those satisfies the Public Authority Section 2879. Do you have any questions? If not, that completes my report.
Any questions?
Just one, because it's highlighted on your report. Where do we stand on the internet access, I know it's small potatoes, for the permit system on the Great Sacandaga
We
Lake?
received a beta version from IMC, the company doing it, and we're currently reviewing it for changes. I met with Sue Visco at Sacandaga last week. We called Beth over IMC just to fine tune some of the functions. I think we're real close to where we should be with that.
Okay.
Looks really slick.
It's a lot nicer. There'll be some learning curves.
Okay. Always
We're
are.
almost there.
Very good.
Okay. Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chief Fiscal Officer, Mr. Farrar.
Mr. Chairman, my report can be found on pages 50 through 139. As usual, I'll focus on the fiscal highlights on page 50. Under reporting, well, actually, first, the district's independent auditors completed their field work on August 19th. We had several exchanges since then, nothing significant whatsoever, so I fully expect to see an unqualified draft audit by probably next week, but in any case, we should certainly have something final prior to the requirement to post that on the Public Authority Report System by September 30th. The reason why my report is almost 90 pages is that it reflects June, July, and August. June, although the auditors, I haven't seen the auditor's report, but from a profit and loss perspective, on page 95 is the June appropriation report for the Hudson River area, and I just wanted to point out to the board that on the expenses side, we came in at 95.81%, meaning we actually came in under by about $107,000. The income looks way out of line. It looks like we received 152% of our revenue. The reason for that is we have some federal headwater fees we've been receiving. Many of them are reflective of years prior. We just book them in the current year, but that's also very good news as we continue to receive. And most recently, for the July 1, 2016 to June 30, 2017 assessment year, we have received from Erie Boulevard federal headwater benefit fees in the amount of $365,100, and we received the annual fee from Boralex in the amount of $104,614. Very good news. On the state assessment, we received, and these state assessments and federal assessments are not due to October 31st, so when you start receiving your assessments in August, I find that very promising. Saratoga County paid their assessment, and Warren County. Warren County's was $242,908, and Saratoga $1,035,809. Public authority reports, I alluded to the annual independent audit, the procurement investment report, annual report, and the data request, all scheduled for 9:30, have all been completed, and it's just a matter of me submitting them. One network issue, I attended a cybersecurity meeting for non-executives over at the Capitol. They are taking this cybersecurity very seriously. They should. They were all the major public authorities were there, Power Authority, others. We have, in terms of a concern, I think, of the group that was there, other than maybe the Thoroughbred Racing, which I believe has one employee, we probably have the least exposure. We clearly, in terms of the information that we retain in our databases, you would not consider us a target. Our primary concern is the SAGE 100 Mass 90 system, which retains all of the payroll data for the folks, meaning name and social security number. That hides very nicely behind a fairly elaborate VPN firewall and all of the encryption provided by SAGE. And I've been told that in order to access that data at a minimum, a hacker would actually have to go out and purchase that software, which starts at $3,000. So they'd have to purchase it just in the case that they happen to hack something out of our system. They'd have to purchase it just to see if they could see what they thought they were looking for. So we're in very good shape. But the first thing they wanted completed was a network security assessment that was completed by Tag Solutions, New York State small business concern who provides our network support. There was nothing of any concern that they found. There were some items that they will now look at in terms of providing us with a remediation plan. There's some software upgrades that we need, but they're all minor things. I expect to get that before the next meeting. I'll report back. And I think that's about it for me for my report.
Great. Awesome. Thank you very much. Any questions? comments? Very good. Chief Engineer, Mr. Folker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report begins on page 140. August precipitation in the Hudson River area actually was above average for the month and through August 29th. And so too was our inflow at both Conklinville and the Great Sacandaga Lake and Indian Lake. Much needed rain in terms of reservoir elevations and maintaining base river flows. In the Black River area, we also had between 114 and 160% of historic average at precipitation at Stillwater, Old Forge, Six Lake reservoirs. And despite that, and maybe a reflection of how dry it is and below the groundwater table is, we actually had inflow to Stillwater Reservoir of only about 70% of historic average, despite having that higher than historic average precip. So as a result of that, we're at Conklinville and Great Sacandaga Lake, we're about 0.6 of a foot above the historic average and about 3.4 feet below our target, our settlement target elevation. At Indian Lake, we're about 1.5 feet below historic. At Stillwater, we're above by about 0.7 of a foot, and Old Forge and Six Lake, we are right on target. Would like to also mention that since we are in the Black River area, I, over the last month or so, had a conversation with Lewis County Soil and Water Conservation Service and Shell Bill Hart, the district manager. We talked about, and I believe we had a discussion with the board about possibly funding some river monitoring and providing some river monitoring services. We did talk about this last year. And we did receive a quote from USGS for services related to the publishing of certain Black River flow data, specifically in a reach not very far from here, which would kind of remove a dead spot, if you will, an area that isn't currently published and made very readily available to the public. The quotation seemed reasonable, but at the time, USGS had indicated that they would have to come in and supply all of the equipment, basically replacing the Soil Conservation Services equipment for us to fund that type of site. So at this point, I'm not sure that that would necessarily be in keeping with soil conservation services, what Soil and Water Conservation Services best interest, and certainly their objectives and goals currently. So we continue to work for a solution, but I think we're on the right path, and certainly from a cost standpoint, seems like it will be something that we can manage. So be glad to answer any questions on operations if you have them.
No, any questions, comments?
Very good.
I think I do have, and it's not on the agenda, I believe, the Old Forge Six Lake. Actually, now that I think about it. Yes, you should receive a memorandum on recommendations for remedial measures at Old Forge and Six Lake. That was at the end of my report. And you'll recall in 2014, CDM Smith completed safety inspection of the first engineering assessment at Old Forge and Six Lake. And we provided an inspection and assessment to the board in May 2015. And in that report, CDM identified several safety and maintenance compliance issues in their engineering assessment. A quick summary of those is the deficiencies are related to insufficient low-level outlet discharge, spillway stability, seepage through some of the concrete structures, deteriorated concrete surfaces, and we have a small gate at Old Forge that's been inoperable since way before I came to the district. And at Sixth Lake, some similar discharge capacity and concrete, deteriorating concrete concerns. It's anticipated that district personnel will be capable of maintaining, completing some of the maintenance items that were brought to our attention through the engineering assessment. But staff recommends hiring an engineering consultant to provide design services to complete tasks which will address those compliance issues, specifically to develop a methodology and plan to adequately and safely pass the design floods at each facility, a methodology and plan to stabilize the spillway at Old Forge and the embankment at Sixth Lake, methodology and plan to reduce or eliminate seepage through the structures, and a plan to construct a low-level outlet discharge at Old Forge. I did supply a tentative and proposed schedule, and which would call for engineering services to be procured between now and the end of the year. Engineering work to be conducted in 2017, and then construction at Old Forge beginning June 2018, and construction at Sixth Lake scheduled to begin in June 2019. And staff seeks board authorization to procure engineering services from a qualified engineering firm to provide the engineering design work necessary to complete the recommended repairs.
Okay, and you're gonna come with some specific contract, you just,
We're just, right now, just asking for the board's authorization to procure the services, and we'll go out and solicit consistent with
RFQ.
the
yeah, we need a motion to
the
this
state process.
Please,
Do you want a motion?
yes, please.
I'll make the motion.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Mr.
All in
Bergstress,
favor?
Mr. Noto.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good.
Yep. That concludes it now, yes.
Hudson and Black River Administrator,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report starts on page 176. Everything in both areas, operations are normal. The garage, the new garage at the Black River Field Office, myself, Mr. Smullen, and Mike Moser went up there and assisted the staff up there on pouring the concrete floor. And the walls are up now, the trusses are on site. So it's going ahead according to schedule, and hope to have it weather tight by snow flies. The other thing, I just want to give you a quick update on the Okie, Gizzy, Edwards encroachment in Mayfield. I was contacted the other day by NCON officers that they have signed the order of agreement. I'm not sure what the agreement is yet, what the fines are, or what the remediation is. So I'm still waiting on that order from them. I hope to give you a better update at the next board meeting on what's going on with that encroachment. So, I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody may have.
I'm just looking at your report, what's the issue with Sacandaga Park Beach?
I'm sorry?
What's the issue with Sacandaga Park Beach?
That's been an ongoing issue for a while with Lalanzi's and the Sacandaga Park Bathing Beach Association on a sign issue that the Lalanzi's want certain words on the sign, and Park Beach wants other words on the sign, so it's not a big issue, but to them, it is a big issue, so we're trying to compromise and come up with
All
it.
right.
Is this the same issue that was in litigation years ago?
It
About
was.
access?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, could I just add one thing to my
Sure.
report? I did fail to mention, I was stating the Hudson River area final results. I'd be remiss if I didn't add the Black River area of that. In the Black River area, as of June, their expenses came in 10% under budget, or $119,000. Their budget was $1,191,000. They came in at $1,072,000. Their revenues also exceeded the budgeted revenues. In this case, it was due to the receipt of the state share for the upcoming new apportionment, and that amount was $250,000. So,
Okay, very good.
in excellent shape there also.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Any board members' questions and comments? We have, you showed me, I'm about a newsletter that you were looking into.
So we've been evaluating a variety of newsletters, one of them being a company called Constant Contact. It's a very well-known newsletter template format, and we'll be soliciting topics and then we'll put together a sample letter. We've been working with the Hudson Valley Greenway as our example firm. They do it quite frequently. They distribute them both in print but also via email and as well as on the website. So we think we can get pretty broad coverage onto what was the old newsletter used to be called the Water Line. People may remember from the 2002 timeframe.
Very good. Any other questions, comments?
I bring up a problem that's been going on in the Fulton chain. I spoke to everybody, a few people individually. There's a large sandbar, which seems to be a popular spot in the summer. It will, right now, cease to be an issue once the water levels drop, et cetera. But it's, to give you a brief synopsis, all summer long, there can be as many as 200 or 300 boats tied up in front of these private property, doing all sorts of summer things. And so it's become an issue up there, and just to let you know, when local law enforcement contacted OGS for some advice on which way to go with this, OGS advised them that it was our jurisdiction. So, I just want to give you a heads up that we were named as the enforcement agency for this problem by OGS.
We can be named as the enforcement agency, but we lack badges
Oh, I
and
understand that part. I
guns
just
and
wanted to
boats
make everyone
and
aware of
people.
the fact that we were named out of
Can we
OGS
get
as the
guns?
enforcement agency for this project.
We have, it is a navigable waterway.
Right. Yeah, I spoke with
And the state of New York polices navigable waterways through ENCON Police, the ENCON Forest Rangers, the state police, the sheriff's department. Beyond that, we really don't have a role in
I understand, and I'll keep you apprised because I speak with the
keeping
police
people
chief
from, drinking on their boats, dancing on their boats, whatever they were doing, playing loud music on their boats. It's still within the town. The town can enact a noise ordinance. The police department can enforce that noise ordinance. It's a similar problem to a problem we have at Sacandaga. It's similar to a problem that
Everybody has.
Lake George has. The greater police presence in a particular area basically pushes that problem to a different spot. Doesn't eliminate it, it basically just moves it.
Well, we're dealing with it right now. I mean, we asked for a ruling from the Association of Towns and Villages, and being on the town board there, we didn't like that recommendation either, so
Right.
we'll see. I just wanted to let you know that we were named as the responsible agency.
Well, everybody always
Pass the
points.
buck.
I had a woman talk to me a couple of weeks ago. She had been contacting agencies since 8 a.m. Got to me about 3:30. And I was the 25th call she'd made, kind of thing. And everybody had pointed at somebody else with regard to her issue, which was the same issue on a different lake. And I appreciate her concern, but
Well, like I said, this is an issue that's about to go away when the water levels drop.
Until next year.
Until next year.
until next year.
Any other comments? If not, resolution for the next board meeting, which is October 12th in Stillwater at our field, the meeting's being held at the field house in Stillwater.
Which
Yeah.
is a Wednesday.
Which is a
Correct, it's a
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday, so
I think I misspoke earlier when I said it was at the Stillwater Hotel. It's actually at our office.
Yes.
Correct.
Motion,
So move.
Mr. Hayes?
all in
Mr.
favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in
Mr.
favor?
Rosenthal? Mr.
Thank you,
Bergström?
thank everybody for
Thank
coming,
you.
appreciate all the concerns, comments.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.